Hello, my name is Cheryl Robinson, and I currently attend St. John's River State College. This is my research paper presentation for English Comp 2. I'd like to welcome you. The title of my research paper is Exercising Religious Freedom in the Public Education System. Now, according to the First Amendment of the Constitution, every individual in the United States has the right to exercise religious freedom. This includes prayer being spoken at public schools, provided it does not disrupt academic learning that could be taking place. Our First Amendment of the United States Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, this is due to the existence of the First Amendment that states all Americans are entitled to religious freedoms. Student-led prayer should remain in the public education system, but it must not disrupt academic learning. Guidelines set forth by the U.S. Department of Education must be followed, and public school policies must be enforced. One of the most notable Supreme Court cases back in the 1960s was the Engel versus Vitale case. This case, in particular, is known as the school prayer case. It required that every student had to recite this prayer every morning. The prayer was written by the New York Board of Regents. It read as, Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence on Thee, and we beg Thee blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. This case upset parents and students within the community because the school prayer violated the First Amendment rights. It caused a lot of controversy and a lot of arguments and disagreements amongst students, parents, and individuals within the community. Now, the decision by the Supreme Court in this case, this particular case, was ruled that the school prayer was unconstitutional. It violated our constitutional rights, and it was removed from the daily recite. They were not required to recite it anymore in this case. Now, after this case, it was a very prominent case, there came the development of the Establishment Clause. The Establishment Clause, the Supreme Court stated, neither a state nor the federal government can set up a church, pass laws, aiding one religion or all religions, or prefer one religion over another. Now, according to Steve Green, the legal director of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, there were multiple complaints regarding religious activities and views being pushed upon students within the public school system. Faculty members and teachers would push their views upon these students, and it would upset people. Steve Green also stated that the school officials are not clear as to what the rules are when pertaining to the church and state rules. With this, there came the Equal Access Act. The Equal Access Act states that for public secondary schools to receive federal assistance, they must not discriminate against extracurricular activity clubs based on religion or political views. Now, this opens up another door in respect of who can practice what religions or what activities can go on after school. You cannot, if you want to have a Jewish club, or if you want to have a Christian club, or even so, a Muslim club. This cannot be discriminated. The school cannot come back and say that this is not allowed. Now, the Equal Access Act provided protection to the religious students against any form of discrimination. If it was found that there was any type of discrimination, these public schools would lose their federal assistance. So, following this, there was the Santa Fe Independent School District versus Doe. This was another Supreme Court case. This case involves student-led prayer being spoken at school activities and functions, like at graduations or prior to a football game. The students would vote on whether a prayer should be spoken at a school function or activity. Now, you think about this. If we were to vote, your majority is going to rule. If you vote on a prayer in a school, it should not happen because of the fact of your majority is going to overrule any minorities. So you may have a minority that is against it. So, and ultimately the Supreme Court ruled in this decision that student-led prayer by voting was found unconstitutional too, because of the decision would be for majority of students and exclude the minorities. So now the guidelines prior to these cases, following these cases, the guidelines set forth by the U.S. Department of Education included 2 questions. And in these questions, when problems arise or questions arise as to whether or not it was allowed in the public school systems, they were to ask these questions. Number 1, is the activity sponsored in any way by the school officials? This would fall under the church and state separation. The activity, is it being sponsored by the school, or is it being sponsored by a student? Are students coming forward and saying they want to do this activity? The other question is, does it disrupt, harass, or otherwise impose upon others who do not wish to engage in the activity? If somebody says they choose not to engage in it, it is unconstitutional. If they harass somebody about it, it is nowhere said that somebody has to be involved in the activity. Students have a choice, and it should be the right of the student as to whether or not they choose to participate. Now, there are recent examples that have contributed to these. I have included in my research paper. One of the examples is one out of Georgia. It's the mass baptism that took place prior to a football practice on the football field. Now, there were 3 students that chose to go to the local pastor and asked him to witness this baptism. They requested a mass baptism. Nobody was forced to be involved. It was the sole choice of the students, and it wound up being about 17, 18 students that participated. Now, this is one of your prime examples of the separation of church and state. Now, the pastor and the coach did participate. He was baptized, and the pastor was there to witness. It is currently in debate as to whether or not this was a violation of First Amendment rights and a violation of church and state. In my opinion, I do not see this as a violation of church and state. I see it as a pastor witnessing, and the community accepted it. So, now, also, all school policies must be followed. If a club or something like that finds that policies are being broken, then no, the activity should not be allowed. Another example of this, Coach Joe Kennedy up in Bremerton, Washington, he has made it a ritual for 20 years as a high school football coach to go pray at the 50-yard line by himself, silently, after every football game. He's being ridiculed. He's currently on a leave of absence because of this. The school board stated that it was unconstitutional and he was pushing his views upon students, which was not true at all. Students should have the right to choose their religious devotion, if any. They should have the right to exercise it in a manner that is non-disruptive to educational learning, provided it remains with the guidelines that have been outlined and school policies that have been established. Thank you for listening to my presentation.